Welcome, everybody. This is John Matarazzo from Charisma Media, and we are very excited to have an author spotlight today with the author of this amazing book, Running into the Fire. Terri Hasdorff is with us. I'll be bringing her up in just a moment. But this is why more Christians need to be involved in politics. Now, this book has been out for about a week or so, and it is doing really, really well. And we are excited to be able to talk to the author today. And I got to say, I've been reading this in preparation for my conversation with her, and it's really hard to put down. And the chapters are very, very well written, and but she's giving a great plan for how we as Christians can get involved with politics and make a positive change. So I want to welcome right now, this will be my first time meeting her. I'm really excited to connect with Terri Hasdorff. Welcome so much for being here on Charisma Media's live stream here and our author spotlight. Terri, welcome.
Thank you so much. It's so wonderful to be with you today, John.
It is a pleasure to have you here, and I want to hear about your story and how God really spoke to you about writing this book. But I was just captured by the first couple chapters where you're really telling your story of how you got involved in making a difference and saw how you can do that. Yeah, I'd love to just kind of let you introduce yourself, and then let's kind of jump right into talking about where this book came from.
Well, thanks, John. I started in politics when I was literally in high school. God just really kind of called me to the mountain of government at an early age. I remember my youth pastor came running up to me one day and said, "How would you like to go to Russia on an exchange program?" And he was also working in the governor's office at the time. And I was chosen as one of 40 student leaders from across the state of Alabama to travel to 7 different cities in the Soviet Union. And it was one of the most eye-opening experiences of my life. I remember the first thing that hit me when I, was on the ground there was just the oppression of the people and the hopelessness and the way that people they never smiled. And I realized that that's what communism does to people. And socialism is basically the transition into communism.
Right.
So when my plane landed back at John F. Kennedy Airport after 3 long weeks in a communist country, I literally got down on my hands and knees and kissed the ground. I was so grateful to be an American. And that's really what put me on the path to working in government, because I just had such a deep appreciation for the fact that we can get involved and we can make a difference. And I think people take that so for granted. They don't realize how rare that is and what an incredible honor it is that we have the ability to make a difference. So I started volunteering. I worked as an intern in the governor's office, and then went up to the White House and interned there, went to the Labor Department and the Treasury Department. And each summer with college, kept going back, and every Jan term. And pretty soon I was working in the White House, and they said, hey, we'd love for you to stay on board. And so I stayed on for a year during the last year of the Bush administration in the Office of Public Liaison. And my boss was the main liaison to the faith community. So I got to see firsthand, kind of how government worked, and then eventually went to work on the Hill, ran for Congress myself in Alabama in 2020, and took over a super PAC. And after 20 plus years of experience in government and politics, I just felt like after all that was finished, God just made it really clear I was supposed to write this book. So that's kind of the journey. And I've taken my 20 plus years of experience in working on campaigns, working with, various government agencies, and at all levels, state and local, as well as federal and international. And put this into this book just to teach people who maybe haven't been involved in politics, or maybe you're a mom and you see what's happening around you and you're just like, oh gosh, I would do more if I knew how. Well, that's kind of who this book was written for. It's for people who are wanting to make a difference, but they just need to know a little bit more.
Yeah, I was, as I was looking at your book, I was just thinking, you know what? Before I opened it up, really, my thought was not everybody can run for government. Not everybody can run for a seat because there's only so many seats. But I know that everybody can do something. And so I love that you're helping people to be able to be equipped to do what God's called them to do, to make an impact in their local community, their state, their region, and even national, if God calls them to do that. I do find it interesting that you made mention about being a foreign exchange student for a few weeks and getting that experience. I wasn't a foreign exchange student, but I was leading missions trips to Eastern European countries when I was in Youth with a Mission. And over a period of 5 months, I was in 5 different former communist countries. And you talked about the oppression there. I was in Bulgaria, Romania, Moldova, Ukraine, and Poland. And so I got to see really how communism has affected all of these different countries in different ways. But one thing that really stuck out to me was that the oppression, kind of whenever you're watching a movie that it takes place in one of those Eastern European countries, especially under communism, it's almost like there was a gray overtone over everything in these movies.
Yes.
And I thought that was just a special effect. But when you go there, it's a real thing.
Yes.
And the spirit of oppression is coming out in a physical way. And so it's really interesting just to hear that you had a similar experience there. And I too am very grateful that God has allowed me to be an American and to grow up here. But in your book, you talk about an experience that you had in Africa. Can you just talk about that story a little bit?
Sure, I'll be happy to. I was brand new at USAID. I had been asked to take over the Office of Faith-Based and Community Initiatives at the U.S. Agency for International Development, which is a sister agency to the State Department. And right after I started, they said, you've got to get out in the field. You've got to see some of these programs firsthand. And I was actually traveling to Ethiopia, but a friend of mine at Convoy of Hope said, I want to hijack your trip for a day. You're going to fly through Nairobi anyway. Will you just let me have a day? And I said, okay, fine. So they picked me up and I was whisked to this area called the Mathari Valley, which is one of the poorest slums in the world. The conditions there are so extreme that literally the police and the fire department won't respond if they're called to go there because the people are so desperate and the poverty is so intense. So it's a little bit of a dangerous place to go. We met a man named Reverend Nuthu, and Reverend Nuthu had been in a wealthier part of Nairobi. He and his wife came down to the Mathari Valley one day from their church that was in this other area, and they realized that there were all these children that were orphans there. You have an enormous amount of orphans because of HIV/AIDS. And so they said, well, we'll start a feeding program here one day a week. And then they very quickly realized that for many of the children, almost all of them, that one meal during the week was the only real meal most of those kids got. And so they felt like God was calling them to the Mathari Valley. And they came and settled their church on the edge of the valley. And as he was explaining all of this to us, they had 6 young men surround us with billy clubs. They told us to take off all of our jewelry, leave our cameras behind, and they walked us out through this little portal, this back gate, and it was just one of the most overwhelming experiences I've ever had. The poverty was so intense. They have raw sewage running down the road because there's no sewage system there. There's no electricity. There's no running water. He walked us to for several blocks and blocks, and finally we got to this massive mountain of garbage. And they started to walk up this thing, and I looked at that and thought, oh gosh, I had never seen poverty this intense, and I was already very overwhelmed, and it looked very dirty and unsafe. And I thought, I don't think I want to do that. So I hung back with one of my staff. And after a few minutes, I felt this hand on my shoulder, and it was Reverend Nuthu. He had come all the way back down to come get me. And he took my hand and he said, please come with me. I want to show you something. And I said, okay. So we marched up this mountain of garbage. And after we got about halfway up, he stopped and he pointed down to the ground. And I looked down, and what I saw was a rotting pile of goat intestines. And they were black and they were covered in flies, and the smell coming off of them was nauseating. And I kind of stared at him like, why would you show me this? It just didn't even compute. And he said, he looked at me and he pointed back down again, and he said, this is what they eat. If we don't feed them, this is what they come and eat. Wow. And I still just couldn't wrap my brain around it. He said, the children will come here to find food if we don't feed them.
Wow.
And I went back to my hotel room that night, and I just cried and cried and cried. And I remember just thinking, I am seeing these horrific conditions with human suffering that is at a level I've never experienced before. Where's the police? Where's the firefighters? Where's the medics? Where's the politicians? Where's the people, the Hollywood celebrities? Where are the people to help? I didn't see any of them. But you know who I did see? I saw the Christians. I saw the faith-based organizations. I saw Reverend Nuthu, who was there day in, day out, making a difference in these kids' lives, because if he didn't step in and get involved, they were literally going to be eating some of the most disgusting things on the planet. And so that made such an impression on me that to this day I carry with me. It's a picture of what can happen when good people don't get involved.
Yeah. And that's a big problem that we have with the church, especially in America, that when it comes to politics, so many people just have the mentality of, I'm going to be separated from that. They've kind of believed the myth of separation of church and state, where they're saying that the church can't get involved with the government. But really, Thomas Jefferson's original intent for his communication, that's not even in law. That was just personal letters back and forth explaining some things. It's to keep the government out of church. And so we've kind of taken the back seat, and we've reversed that role. But Christians are, as you said, Christians are the ones that are normally going to the trash dumps to go take care of people and to, go to the worst and the worst. But we often shy away from really the worst of the worst, which is Washington, D.C. So why is it that Christians don't want to get involved in politics?
Well, that's a great question. After I ran for Congress, I was talking to a friend of mine who had also run around the same time I did. And he's a Christian. And I asked him, I said, why do you believe Christians shy away from being involved in politics? And he said, well, because they're afraid of it. They think of it as being dirty and corrupt. And I said, yes, that's what I hear over and over. He said, but what they really need to be doing is thinking of it more like people who are in the military or law enforcement or people who are firefighters, because they're trained to overcome their fears. And instead of running away from the burning building, they run right into it. And when you think about, we just had the anniversary of September 11th, just 2 days ago. If those people, the firefighters, the police who were so brave on 9/11, what if they hadn't been brave? What if they had said, "Oh gosh, that's so scary and I'm so afraid of it and it's so dirty. I'm just going to run away." Can you imagine how many more lives would have been lost? So there really is a need, and politics is no different than anything else. There's good actors and bad actors. I think one of the main things that I try to tell people in this book is there's hope. There are good people in government. There really are good people. I know a lot of them personally. They just need more reinforcements. They need more support. It's a numbers game when you're dealing with politics. And if you're the only one, it's much harder to stand. But if you have other people that are supporting you and helping you do what you're trying to do, it makes a huge difference. And that's what I'm calling on the body of Christ to help do.
It really does make a huge difference whenever we stand together. And because I think in maybe the first or second chapter of your book, you talk about how the majority of our country actually, even recently, recognizes themselves, or at least says that they're Christians. Mm-hmm. And so if the Christians would actually rally together and get behind what the Bible was saying, then we could make some real positive difference instead of just sitting back and letting a small 1% really take over and really dictate the culture. In the foreword of your book, in the foreword of the book, there's a quote that politics is downstream from culture. That's right. And Frank Wright, he's the one that wrote the foreword for that. But he says that politics is not downstream from culture. It's rather woven through the entire fabric of culture. That's right. Can we talk about how politics and culture work together?
Well, absolutely. You look at how much Hollywood influences our culture. Politics is no different. All of the decisions and the laws and the things that, are happening around us every day that touch our daily lives are made by the people who we put in office. And I think the average citizen a lot of times doesn't understand just how much some of those political decisions really do influence so many things in their daily lives. And so, for people to say that the two are reversed or disconnected, having seen firsthand after working in this for so many years, I can tell you it very strongly influences culture for positive or negative. And so that's why the mountain of government is such a critical one, to make sure that we have the right people there serving in leadership positions, because that mountain of government influences all the other mountains.
It really does. And the government is not just in Washington, D.C. Government's the local people too, like school board and council and whatever else that you can actually vote on that you normally have. They're farther down the ballot whenever you get to that. And there are people that you don't really know who they are most of the time. What advice do you have for me? I'm new to Florida. I voted in the primary election here for the first time, and it was a new system for me. And I must say that it was not a big deal to pull out my driver's license and say, yes, this picture is me. That's not a big deal. I felt like my vote is actually going to count here. I just moved here from Pennsylvania, where they have no clue if it's me or not. And so I actually feel like my vote actually matters a lot more here in Florida. But being new to the area, I don't know who these people are that I'm voting for. So how can somebody that is either new because they've just moved, or new because they're a first-time voter, or they all of a sudden feel like this is the time for me to really get involved in politics, what advice can you give them to really understand the different realms of the politics that we can get involved with, and how do we vote?
Sure. So you said something so right on, John. I love that you said that you voted in the primary. That is something that is so critical, because when you look at the numbers, sometimes less than half of Christians vote at all. So that's first and foremost voting, but voting in primaries, the number is usually even less than that.
Hmm.
A lot of people just think, oh, I'll just wait and vote in the general. And yet the primary is the election in a lot of states. I know in Alabama, that's the case, my home state. It's very hard a lot of times for anybody from the opposing party to get in. And so that primary really is going to be the election. So voting in primaries is critical. If you are new in an area, or if you've never been really that involved in politics and you want to plug in, finding other people who are like-minded, who can help equip you with information and tools that you can use to make good, educated decisions, is something that first and foremost I would look at doing. You want to do your homework on candidates. That's something that I think really a lot of folks don't spend enough time on. They'll see a lot of billboards and think, oh, that must be a good person. They have their name in the most places, and so I'll just go ahead and vote for them. And sometimes the person who is the least able to pay for all those billboards may be the best candidate out there, but nobody knows about them because they don't have that much money. Politics is a marketing campaign in a lot of ways. And so you have to do your homework and really vet candidates out. And then if you find a good candidate who is worthy of your support, spending your time, your influence, voting not just at the ballot box, but voting with your wallet and your time and your influence on social media, and calling into radio shows to support them, or showing up at town hall meetings, doing whatever you can to get the word out about that candidate is really valuable. And I just also say, there's a lot of wonderful resources that I put in the back of the book. It's kind of like a reference guide so that people know where they can go to look for information if they need more. And that's something that you'll find in the back of the book.
I really appreciate that. You put a lot of research into the appendix of this to help people basically wherever they are, whatever part of the country, because there are great resources or PACs that they're local, but they're national, or at least they can help point you in the right direction. I know that for me, I actually reached out to the Life PAC in Pennsylvania to ask them. I now have moved to Florida and I'm going to be voting here, but you don't cover this region. Who would you recommend? So even if you need to do something like that, I highly recommend just asking somebody that that you can trust who they would recommend, even if they can't give you the recommendations for people to vote for in your own election. A couple years ago, I had the opportunity to actually help in a small way with a campaign back in Pittsburgh, and just on a congressional level. And it was very eye-opening to be so close to it. I mean, I did podcast interviews, I put up signs, I met with them, went to different events, and it was very eye-opening. That was the first time that I got involved in politics at a local level like that. So could you just talk about your experience running for a seat? And I know that that didn't turn out the way that we would hope that it would, but you learned a lot during that process.
I learned so much, John, and I'll just tell you, I prayed and prayed about the decision. I just knew that I was supposed to run. I knew God wanted me to run. I didn't know if I was supposed to win. I just knew I was supposed to run. And because I ran, I learned a lot of things that I was able to share in this book. So it's never wasted. Anytime that you run, it's going to teach you a lot. You're going to meet a lot of people. You're going to learn a lot about the process. And, it may be that you're supposed to go on and run again and then get elected, or it may be that you're just supposed to know about those things for the next go round. But I think one of the first things that I saw that was so important was just the need for more support. If you are somebody who God has called to run for office, I think a lot of folks don't really understand the massive amount of sacrifice that often takes. And I've worked in politics my whole life. I've worked some really hard jobs. I worked, on Capitol Hill, where when you're a congressional staffer, sometimes you work 80-hour work weeks. I have never worked so hard my entire life than when I ran for office. I had bags under bags under bags under my eyes, because you just don't get a lot of sleep. You're suddenly put into this position where you're running a small business, you're having to make hiring and firing decisions, you're having to hire vendors, you're having to make decisions about, what you're doing with press and media. You are giving speeches all the time. You're having to constantly travel from place to place to place. We put 2,500 miles on a rental car in 1 week.
Wow.
So there's a lot of pressures that you're already under. And, you can't really work full time while you're doing that. That is full time and a half. So just even the financial pressure sometimes of unhooking from everything so that you can focus on that. So with all that going on, you need a lot of support. And that's what I think really stood out to me the most is, if you have people that are honest and that are doing what they feel like God is calling them to do and willing to go out and do that, you can't send them out into battle alone. You've got to get behind them. You've got to support them, do whatever you can to get behind them. Because if God's not calling you to serve directly, that's fine. This book is not to say everybody needs to go run for office, not by any stretch of the imagination. What I'm saying is if God's not calling you to run, if God's not calling you to serve in government, you don't get a pass. You still need to support those people who do, because it's incredibly demanding. And then once they get into office, there's also a lot that they're going to need support with too, just to kind of have their arms held up so that they know that they've got people there who are willing to back them up and also keep them accountable.
That is very important. And, we here at Charisma, we've published your book, Running into the Fire. And I've got a couple people that I want to actually bring on. They're part of our Charisma team here. This is Chad and Josh. And just before I bring them on, I want to play this video again that I played at the very beginning, just because these guys are so excited about this book and how well it's doing that they decided that they're going to do what they can to help promote this message. And so they put together this video, and just hope you guys enjoy this, and we'll come back with Chad and Josh. Oh, Terri, what do you think of that? What do you think of that?
That's awesome. That's my home state of Alabama. That's just fantastic.
Oh, that's great. Obviously, there was a Forrest Gump connection there, and so that is great. I'm glad that you enjoy that. So,
great job.
I want to ask Chad and Josh, what inspired you guys to make this video?
Yeah, so Terri, it's nice to see you face to face. So I'm Josh, and this is Chad. So we've been making some social media videos to help promote books and promote other aspects of Charisma Media. And so every once in a while, Chad and I, with the other members of the sales team, will sit down and just start throwing out ideas for what we can make as far as a video. And we've made a few promos for Jonathan Kahn and other things. And so we kind of just sat around one day and we're thinking, what's a lighthearted advertisement that we can do for the book? And I think Chad was the one that came up with, why don't we do that scene from Forrest Gump where he's running? And it just went from there. And so we got the idea, and Chad had the shoes at home and had the whole outfit. So we put it together, and we were running down the road together making this video. And it turned out, it's hilarious. I love this video we were just talking about. You could teach college courses on this social media video. I love it.
Well, I love it too. And Terri, just when you see people that are excited about this book, when you think of running, you're talking about running into a fire, but they obviously took the Forrest Gump approach. But what does running in the fire really mean to you?
Well, I think it's about being brave. It's about just getting involved and rolling up your sleeves and not being afraid to do what may be hard work, may be a little scary, may be new, and uncomfortable at first, but it's like anything else in life. You learn by doing, you ease in, you realize who the good actors are and who the bad actors are. And then you stay with others that are like-minded, that keeps you strong. And it's about doing what God's calling you to do.
That's great. That's great. Now, Chad and Josh, I know you guys have been listening to this interview, and I just want to give you guys an opportunity to talk to Terri and ask some questions from your perspective.
Sure. Yeah. First of all, Terri, we're really excited to be publishing running into the fire with you. As you mentioned, it was released last week, and it is a fantastic book. You did mention that you started getting involved in politics when you were in high school. I found that really, really fascinating. In your book, you talk about how anyone from a soccer mom to a multimillionaire can get involved in politics to some degree. For me personally, I was wondering, what is the biggest takeaway you're hoping that a reader would get out of this book?
That you can make a difference. Even if you have very little money and you think, I'm just one person, there are things you can do that make a tremendous difference to get involved. And it may be giving $25 to a candidate. It may be volunteering. It may be just calling into radio shows or taking an issue that you care about and finding others that are like-minded. And maybe you host a dinner once a month where you get other people together. It could be a lot of things. But I think, people just need to understand we live in one of the most amazing countries on the planet, if not the most amazing. And we have the ability to still make a difference. We need to fight to keep that. And we need to take advantage of that while we have it.
Right. No, I agree with you. Sometimes you just need to keep running. A wise man once said that.
That's right.
Josh, do you have any questions?
I don't know I think you guys pretty well covered it. Terri, I just want to say I love the concept of the book. I love the book. I was involved in political campaigns actually in the last couple of years, helping congressional candidates. So politics is near and dear to my heart. It's something that I've really cared about for a long time. And my wife and I both really love getting involved in solid candidates that promote values. And I love that we're talking about getting Christians involved because, Christianity and the church as a whole is going to be the moral high ground of a society, right? And if we're not having people who are the moral high ground getting involved in who makes our laws and who, determines what laws get passed through and what laws don't, and who is the leader of the land, our country will be lost. So it's crucial that we get Christians involved. So thank you for writing this book. It's amazing.
Well, I couldn't have done it without you all. And I just am so grateful for Charisma. Charisma's been amazing to work with, and your books are amazing to be a part of. It's just such an honor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Terri. We're happy to be publishing this book. Again, if you haven't picked this book up yet, it is a fantastic book. It's a must read on everybody's list.
Absolutely.
Well,
Yeah.
I feel like right now, we're in a place in our country where we have never been closer to the brink of socialism. Mm-hmm. And socialism at its core is about replacing God with government and freedom with tyranny. After having seen what that does to people firsthand in communist countries where communism and socialism have never worked, they've been tried over and over and over, and every time it's failed. So, right now we have the ability to still really push back and make a difference on this. If we wait much longer, we may not have that opportunity. The midterm elections are coming up. It's a very critical election in our country's history. We need to get involved. It is critical and imperative that people do that now.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And in addition to getting involved with something physically that they can do, whether it be financially or going out and campaigning, we can all pray. And that's one thing that we here at Charisma are very committed to. What is the spiritual atmosphere? What is the spiritual connection to what is happening in our world today? And I know that your book really speaks to that. But for you right now, we're live on Tuesday, September 13th. As you said earlier, we just were remembering September 11th, which would happen 21 years ago now. I mean, that's amazing. I mean, that's a day that I'll never forget where I was whenever that happened. And after 9/11 happened, churches were packed that next weekend. We had this amazing window of opportunity where everybody was now seeking the Lord. What do you feel about the spiritual climate in our country right now, and do you see hope?
I think we have been divided in some ways, and that is absolutely the last thing that we need to be. The body of Christ works in unity, and God is a God of order, not chaos. And we can't fall for the weapons of mass distraction that have been put in front of us. We have to realize we're Christians and Americans first, and we are all part of this nation that is so incredible. And there is tremendous hope if you look at what the body of Christ can do and has done in the past. If you just look at it as one person, it can be very overwhelming, but you're part of something that is truly the most remarkable thing that we have on the planet, which is a family of believers, a family of Christians, if you are part of the body of Christ. So all we have to do is activate that and start working together. There's a lot of things that I think people see in politics and they feel so overwhelmed by it. One of the things that I realized in the research I was doing for this book is there's just a little over 3,000 counties in the United States. Now, people may not be able to make a difference in the whole world. They may not be able to make a difference in the whole country, but you can make a difference in your county. I mean, that's just your home team. That's your home team advantage that you've got there. And so if you just start looking at how can I get involved even on a county level, looking for either a campaign maybe to get involved with, or, a government official that you really like and want to support, and you just go call their office and say, hey, can I take you to coffee, or can I sit down with one of your staff members and ask them, what do you need? What can I do as just one person? They'll be happy to tell you. I think there's just a need for people to have a less adversarial relationship sometimes. And instead of waiting to just look for something that somebody does wrong, praise them when they do something right, get involved more, let them know what you care about and what you want to see them doing more of. It really does make a difference.
Amen. It really does make a difference. And us getting involved is something that we need to do. We can't sit back and let things happen to us. We need to, as we are told and commanded in the Bible, that we are supposed to occupy until he comes. Occupy until Jesus comes. We're not supposed to sit back and let things just happen. We are supposed to be the influencers. We're supposed to be the salt and light. What happens if the salt loses its flavor? It's not good for anything.
That's right.
This book is a great way to help your salt stay salty and help your light burn bright. Terri, one of the things that we at Charisma really care about is, as I said, Spirit-led living and the Holy Spirit. And I want to ask you this question. This is a little bit on the spot here, but to you, what does it mean to live a Spirit-led life?
Well, for me personally, it has been a lot of time prayer, just spending time seeking not only what God is saying to me personally, but just learning more about what it means to be Spirit-led. As far as each decision that I make, I really take time to pray, get others to pray with me, sometimes fast. I don't just make knee-jerk decisions, but a lot of times in politics, things come at you very fast. And so you do have to learn how to hear in such a way that you can very quickly make decisions at times. But every career move that I've had has been one where I've really prayed it through, and God usually will just open a door or make something very plainly obvious. And I try to not do anything without praying it through first.
That's so good. That's so good, Terri. And I just want to pull up the comment here that Sean Akers did from YouTube. Thanks for watching, Sean. It says, I have read some of Running into the Fire. Terri gives a great overview of the dangers of socialism and how America could be next to be affected by it. She gives us a heads up to rise up. I like that, a heads up to rise up. And awesome. This is an important book, and I want to encourage people to get your own copy. You can go to mycharismashop.com to get that copy there. It's available on the front page there. And Terri, we're so glad that you're a part of our Charisma family, that you're one of our authors, and that we can help you get this very important message out. and help people to actually run into the fire with the right equipment. You know, we wouldn't send a fireman into the fire without, wearing the jacket and the boots and everything. And so this is going to help people run into the fire that God's called you to run into. And this is why more Christians need to be involved in politics. Terri, thank you so much for being here. Chad and Josh, I'm going to pull you guys up just one more time just to say thank you guys for being here.
Thank you,
And Terri, God bless you so much for everything that you're doing. We look forward to connecting with you again soon.
Thank you so much, John. Thank you to everybody at Charisma, Chad and John. This has just been amazing. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.